Bless Me in Meditations, where we provide answers to the intellectual side of Christianity and equip Christians to provide a defense for the hope that is in them. According to 1 Peter 3:15, we continue going through supposed Bible contradictions, 101 cleared up contradictions in the Bible. This is the third part of the series, where we look at contradictions 11 through, I believe it's 25. And these contradictions were submitted by noted Muslim scholar Shabbir Ally, and these gentlemen from the Fander Center for Apologetics in the United Kingdom, Jay Smith, Alex Chowdhry, Toby Jepson, and James Schaeffer, provided answers to the contradictions that were brought by Mr. Ally. And you see that it is common for people who will try to discredit Scripture, to try to get people to doubt its authenticity, to doubt its accuracy. They will bring things up like supposed contradictions. And in this series, we're going to try to refute those contradictions, or at least 101 of them. So, contradiction number 11 as we begin this installment. Did David capture 1,700 of King Zobah's horsemen, like it says in 2 Samuel 8:4, or did he capture 7,000, like he did in 1 Chronicles 18:4? Well, the fine folks at Fander chalked this one up to copyist error. 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4 says that David took 1,000 chariots, 700 horsemen, and 20,000 foot soldiers. In 1 Chronicles 18:4, it says David took 1,000 chariots, 7,000 horsemen. Maybe there's a typo by them or by me there in the title. So is it 700 or 7,000? Well, there are two possible solutions, say those at Fander, to these differing figures. First, by commentators Q and Delitzsch, is a most convincing solution. Those commentators maintain that the word for chariotry, which is the Hebrew word rekeb, was inadvertently omitted by the scribe in copying 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4, and the second figure, 7,000, for the Parasim cavalrymen, was necessarily reduced to 700 from the 7,000 he saw in his Bullridge, for the simple reason that no one would write 7,000 after he'd written 1,000 in recording one in the same figure. Okay, so the copyist likely saw 1,000 and then thought that 700 maybe made more sense than 7,000. The omission of rekeb might have occurred with an earlier scribe, and a reduction from 700 to 7,000 would have then continued with the successive copies by later scribes. But in all probability, the Chronicles figure is right, and the Samuel numbers should be corrected to agree with the Chronicles numbers. Contradiction number 12. Did Solomon have 40,000 stalls for his horses, like it says in 1 Kings 4, verse 26, or did Solomon have 4,000 stalls, like it says in 2 Chronicles chapter 9, verse 25? Again, a copyist error or a misunderstanding of the historical context. 1 Kings 4:26 says Solomon had 40,000 stalls for horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. 2 Chronicles 9:25 says Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. So, is it 4 or is it 40? Well, there are a number of ways to answer these puzzling differences. The most plausible is analogous to what we found earlier in challenge numbers 5 and 6 above, where the decadal number had been rubbed out or distorted due to constant use. Others believe that the stalls mentioned in 2 Chronicles were large ones that housed 10 horses each, that is, a row of 10 stalls. Therefore, 4,000 of these large stalls would be equivalent to 40,000 small stalls. Another commentator maintains that the number of stalls recorded in 1 Kings was the number at the beginning of Solomon's reign, whereas the number recorded in 2 Chronicles was the number of stalls at the end of Solomon's reign. We know that Solomon reigned for 40 years. No doubt many changes occurred during Solomon's 40-year reign. It's quite likely that Solomon reduced the size of his military, the military machine his father David had left him. So those sound like some plausible resolutions to that supposed contradiction. Contradiction number 13. According to the author, did Baasha, king of Israel, die in the 26th year of King Asa's reign, like it says in 1 Kings 15:33, or was Baasha, king of Israel, still alive in the 36th year, like it says he was in 2 Chronicles 16, verse 1? So either there's a misunderstanding of the historical context or there's a copyist error. Let's look at the passages. 1 Kings 15:33 says, in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, Baasha, the son of Ahijah, became king over all Israel in Tisra and reigned 24 years. In 2 Chronicles 16, verse 1, it says, in the 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. There are two possible solutions to this problem. To begin with, scholars have looked at these passages and have concluded that the 36th year of Asa should be calculated from the withdrawal of the 10 tribes from Judah and Benjamin, which brought about the division of the country into Judah and Israel. If we look at it from this perspective, the 36th year of the divided monarchy would be the 16th year of Asa. This is supported by the Book of the Kings of Judah and Israel, as well as contemporary records which follow this convention. Keelan Delitzsch, commentators cited in one of the earlier contradictions, one or more of the earlier contradictions, preferred to regard the number 36 in 2 Chronicles 16:1 and the number 35 in 15:19 as a copyist error for 15 and 16, respectively. The problem is similar to the question numbers 5 and 6 above from, I believe, the previous presentation. In this case, however, the numbers were written using alphabetical type rather than the Egyptian multiple stroke type used in the Elephantine papyri referred to in questions 5 and 6. It is therefore quite possible that the number 16 could quite easily be confused with 36. The reason for this is that up through the 7th century BC, the letter Yod, or 10, greatly resembled the letter Lamed, or 30, except for 2 tiny strokes attached to the left of the main vertical strokes. It required only a smudge from excessive wear on this scroll column to result in making the Yod look like a Lamed. It's possible that this error occurred first in the earlier passage in 2 Chronicles 15:19, with 35 wrongly copied from an original 15. Then, to make it consistent with 16:1, the same scribe, or perhaps a later one, concluded that 16 must be an error for 36 and changed it accordingly on his copy. That's contradiction number 13. Contradiction number 14. Supposed contradiction number 14. Did Solomon appoint 3,600 overseers, like it says in 2 Chronicles 2, verse 2, for the work of building the temple, or did Solomon appoint only 3,300 overseers for the work of the building of the temple, as it says in 1 Kings 5, verse 16? But this supposed contradiction is a result of a misunderstanding of the author's intent. So let's look at the verses. 2 Chronicles 2, verse 2, Solomon selected 70,000 men to bear burdens, 80,000 to quarry stone in the mountains, and 3,600 to oversee them. In 1 Kings 5:16, it says, besides 3,300 from the chiefs of Solomon's deputies who supervised the people who labored in the work. This is not too great a problem. The most likely solution is that the author of 2 Chronicles included the 300 men who were selected as reservists to take the place of any supervisors who would become ill or who had died, while the author of the 1 Kings 5:16 passage includes only the supervisory force. With the group as large as the 3,300, sickness and death certainly did occur, requiring reserves who would be called upon as the need arose. Contradiction number 15. Did Solomon build a facility containing 2,000 baths, like it says in 1 Kings 7:26, or over 3,000 baths, as it says in 2 Chronicles 4, verse 5? Well, this could either be a copyist error or a misunderstanding of the author's intent. The Hebrew verb rendered contained and held is different from the Hebrew verb rendered received, translated received. And the meaning may be that the sea ordinarily contained 2,000 baths, but when filled to its utmost capacity, it received and held 3,000 baths. Thus, the chronicler simply mentions the amount of water that would make the sea like a flowing spring rather than a still pool. This informs us that 3,000 gallons of water were likely required to completely fill the sea, which usually held 2,000 gallons. Another solution follows a theme mentioned earlier, that the number in Hebrew lettering for 2,000 has been confounded by the scribe with a similar alphabetical number for the number 3,000. It should be noted that Shabbir Ally, the Muslim scholar who submitted this list of contradictions in his debate on February 25th, 1998 against J. Smith in Birmingham, United Kingdom, quoted this contradiction and added to it, saying that if the bath had a diameter of 10 cubits, it cannot possibly have had a circumference of 30 cubits, as the text says, since pi dictates that it would have a circumference of 3. Maybe that's 3.1416 or a diameter of 9.549. Ali made the humorous comment, "Find me a bath like that and I will get baptized in it," Ali said. Yeah. Ali did not read the text properly because the text says that it was about 8 centimeters thick and had a rim shaped like a lily. Therefore, it depends on where you measure from. The top or bottom of the inside or the outside of the vessel would all give a different diameter, and depending on whether you measure at the top or at the rim or at the narrower point, you would get a different circumference. In other words, Ali may well be getting baptized if someone can be bothered to make a replica. All right, not a true contradiction. Okay, now this one has multiple contradictions answered in one question. Are the numbers of Israelites freed from the Babylonian captivity correct in Ezra or in Nehemiah? Because numbers 16 to 21 deal with the same census, they're included as one prediction. And this is due to a misunderstanding of the historical context that this is identified as a supposed contradiction. In chapter 2 of Ezra and in chapter 7 of Nehemiah, there are about 33 family units that appear in both lists of Israelites returning from Babylon to Judea. Of these 33 family units listed in Ezra and Nehemiah, 19 of the family units are identical, while 14 show discrepancies in the number of members within the family units. The Muslim scholar Shabbir Ally only lists 6 of them. 2 of the discrepancies differ by 1 differs by 4, 2 differ by 6, 2 differ by 9, another differs by 11, another 2 differ by 100, another by 201, another differs by 105, a further family differs by 300, and the largest difference is the figure for the sons of Asgad, a difference of 1100 between the accounts of Ezra 2 and Nehemiah 7. How then are we to account for the 14 discrepancies? The answer is quite simple. There are both similarities and discrepancies. There are 2 important factors to bear in mind when looking at these discrepancies between the 2 lists. The first is the probability that though members of the units or families had enrolled their names at first as intending to go. In the interval of preparation, some possibly died, others were prevented by sickness or other insurmountable obstacles, so that the final number who actually went was not the same as those who had intended to go. Anyone who's planned a school coach trip to the beach can understand how a typical scenario this really is. A second and more important factor are the different circumstances in which the 2 registers were taken, an important fact of which Muslim scholar Shabbir Ally seems to be acutely unaware. Ezra's register was made up while still in Babylon in the 450s BC before the return to Jerusalem, as listed in Ezra chapter 2, whereas Nehemiah's register was drawn up in Judea around 445 BC, after the walls of Jerusalem had been rebuilt, as it says in Nehemiah chapter 7. A lapse of so many years between the 2 lists, 5 to 10 years, would certainly make a difference in the numbers of each family through death and by other causes. Most scholars believe that Nehemiah recorded those people who actually arrived at Jerusalem under the leadership of Zerubbabel and Jeshua in 537 or 536 BC, according to Nehemiah 7, verse 7. Ezra, on the other hand, uses the earlier list of those who originally announced their intention to join the caravan of returning colonists back to Babylon in the 450s BC. The discrepancies between these two lists point to the fact that there were new factors which arose to change their minds. Some may have fallen into disagreement, others may have discovered business reasons to delay their departure until later, whereas in some cases there were certainly some illnesses or death, and in other cases there may have been some last-minute recruits from those who first decided to remain in Babylon. The clans or the city groups came in with shrunken numbers. All the rest picked up last-minute recruits varying from 1 to 1100. When we look at the names and we find that certain names are mentioned in alternate forms, or when we look at the names, we find that certain names are mentioned in alternate forms. Among the Jews of that time, as well as those living in the East, a person had a name, title, and surname. Thus, the children of Hariph from Nehemiah 7:24 are the children of Jorah from Ezra 2:18, while the children of Saya from Nehemiah 7:47 are also the children of Saiah, Ezra 2:44. When we take all these factors into consideration, the differences in totals that do appear in these two tallies should occasion no surprise whatsoever. The same sort of arbitration and attrition has featured every large migration in human history. Contradiction number 22, another copyist error. Both Ezra 2:64 and Nehemiah 7:66 agree that the totals for the whole assembly was 42,360. Yet, when the totals are added, Ezra totals 29,818 and Nehemiah totals 31,009. In Ezra 2:64, the whole assembly together was 42,360. Nehemiah 7:66, altogether the whole assembly was 42,360. Okay. There are two possible answers to this seeming dilemma. The first is that this is most likely a copyist's error. The original texts must have had the correct totals, but somewhere along the line of transmission, a scribe made an error in one of the lists and changed the total in the other so that they would match without first totaling up the numbers for the families in each list. There's a suggestion that a later scribe, upon copying out these lists, purposely put down the totals for the whole assembly who were in Jerusalem at this time because it was later would have been larger. Sorry. The other possibility is forwarded by the learned Old Testament scholar R.K. Harrison, who suggests that at any rate, the figure of 42,000 may have been metaphorical, following the pattern of the Exodus and similar traditions where the large numbers were copied as symbols of the magnitude of God, and in this particular instance indicating the triumphant deliverance that God achieved for his captive people. Such errors do not change the historicity of the account, since in such cases, another portion of Scripture usually corrects the mistake. The added totals in this instance. As the well-known commentator Matthew Henry once wrote, few books are not printed without mistakes, yet authors do not disown them on the account of this, nor are the errors by the press imputed to the author. The candid reader amends them by the context or by comparing them with some other part of the work. Contradiction number 23, supposed. Contradiction 23. Did 200 singers or 245 singers? Ezra 2:65 says 200. Nehemiah 7:67 says 245. Accompany the assembly. Ezra 2:65. Besides their male and female servants, of whom there were 7,337, and they had 200 men and women singers. Nehemiah 7:67. Besides their male and female servants, of whom there were 7,337, and they had 245 men and women singers. Okay, so is it 200 or 245? As in the question number 7, this is a copyist error, where a scribe copying the numbers in the Ezra account simply rounded off the figure of 245 down to 200. Contradiction number 24. Was King Abijah's mother named Micaiah, daughter of Uriel of Gibeah, as 2 Chronicles 13:2 says, or Maacah, daughter of Absalom, as it says in 2 Chronicles 11:20 and 2 Samuel 13:7. So this is a case of misunderstanding the Hebrew usage. 2 Chronicles 13:2 says he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Micaiah, daughter of Uriel of Gibeah. And there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. 2 Chronicles 11 verse 20 says after her he took Micah, the granddaughter of Absalom, and she bore him Abijah, Attai, Ziza, and Shelomith. 2 Chronicles 13:27 says, but Absalom urged him, so he let Ammon and all the king's sons go with him. This apparent contradiction rests on the understanding of the Hebrew word bat, equivalent to the English daughter. Although used to denote a first-generation female descendant, bat can equally refer to more distant kinship. As an example of this is 2 Samuel 1:24, which states, O daughters of Israel, weep for Saul. As this is approximately 900 years after Israel, also called Jacob, actually lived, it is clear that this refers to the Israelite women, his distant female descendants. When seen in this light, this contradiction vanishes. 2 Chronicles 13:2 correctly states that Micaiah is a daughter of Uriel. We can assume that Uriel married Tamar, Absalom's only immediate daughter. Together they had Micaiah, who then married King Rehoboam and became the mother of Abijah. 2 Chronicles 11 verse 20 and 1 Kings 15 verse 2, in stating that Micah was a daughter of Absalom, simply link her back to her more famous grandfather instead of her lesser-known father to indicate her royal lineage. Absalom is a variant. Abishalom is a variant of Absalom, and Micaiah is a variant of Makkah. Therefore, the family tree looks like this. Absalom or Abishalom. Let's see. There's the family tree. In the last one, verse number 25, Joshua and the Israelites did capture Jerusalem, like it says in Joshua 10:23 and 40, or Joshua and the Israelites did not capture Jerusalem, like it says in Joshua 15:63, and this is a misreading of the text. Joshua 10:23 says they brought out the 5 kings. Joshua 10:40 says they conquered all the kings. Okay. The short answer, not in this campaign. The verses given, I didn't mean to omit that, Joshua 15:63. Short answer is not in this campaign. The verses given are in complete harmony, and the confusion arises only from misreading the passage concerned. In Joshua 10, it is the king of Jerusalem that is killed. His city is not captured. The 5 Amorite kings and their armies left their cities and went to attack Gibeon. Joshua and the Israelites routed them, and the 5 kings fled to the cave in Makkedah, from which Joshua's soldiers brought them to Joshua, who killed them all. Concerning their armies, verse 20 states, the few who were left reached their fortified cities, which clearly indicates that the cities were not captured. So it was the kings, not their cities, who were captured. Joshua 10:28-42 records the rest of this particular military campaign. It states that several cities were captured and destroyed, these being Makkedah, Libnah, Lachish, Eglon, Hebron, and Beer. All these cities are southwest of Jerusalem. King of Gezer and his army were defeated in the field whilst helping Lachish. And in verse 30, comparison is made to the earlier capture of Jericho, but neither of these last 2 cities were captured at this time. Verses 40 and 41 delineate the limits of this campaign, all of which took place to the south and west of Jerusalem. Importantly, Gibeon, the eastern limit of this campaign, is still approximately 10 miles to the northwest of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is therefore not stated as captured in Joshua 10. This agrees completely with Joshua 15:63, which states that Judah could not dislodge the Jebusites in Jerusalem. That is the end of Contradictions 11-25. Next time, we will continue with more contradictions, I guess beginning with number 26, and we'll have to see how long the video becomes before deciding when to end that one. So it's hard for me to tell you at this time exactly which one will be the last one in this video. So, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please check out my other videos on this channel. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day.